So good afternoon, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Brett Dunn. I've been here for quite a while, and I lead the growth advisory side of our business. And today I want to talk to you more about that, right? The theme of our event today is the power of one, and we want to unpack that and talk with you about how we approach deep engagement with our clients through our growth advisory program. And I'm going to start that with a story that I call Through the Forest. So bear with me here. So as we begin our story, we find ourselves at the edge of this forest, right? And you can see it's a really dense forest. The trees are so tall, we can't hardly see the sky. And the forest is so dense that we can't even see that beyond the forest, there's a mountain, right? And this is meant to be a bit of a metaphor for what it's like when we're working in the business. When we're working in the business, all we can see is a long list of tasks and to-do actions and things like that. And it's hard to always see and be able to stay connected to the mountains in the past or in the background that represent our goals and objectives. Okay, so in our story here, I want to talk with you about the scenario where our job right now is to cut a path through the forest, build a road to our objective, which is the top of the mountain in the background that we can't even see, right? So as leaders, we try to build vision for our folks to, not only see where we're trying to go, but be a part of that, right? And get really engaged. But again, when we're in it, it's hard to see it. And that's why it's so important to get above the business, get out of the business for a moment so that you can look down on it and see better what we're trying to accomplish. So again, our story here today is based on cutting a path through the forest and building a road to the mountains beyond, okay? So for a moment, what we're gonna do is get above the trees. See, when we get above the tree line, now we can actually see the mountains in the background and we can see our objective, right? What a difference that makes when we get out of the forest above it and we can actually see where we're trying to go, right? So again, in our story here, our job is to cut a path and we have two teams. Let's just keep it simple. We'll call it Team A and Team B, okay? Now, Team A and Team B I'll just describe them as equally equipped. They both have all the right tools, chainsaws, bulldozers, you name it, they have it, okay? Both teams do. And both teams have all of the same, experience, wisdom, talent, and so forth, okay? One team doesn't have any advantage over another, okay? But Team A thinks about it and they think, well, the shortest distance between any 2 points is a straight line. And they start mowing down the forest and making their way towards their objective. They've done this before. They know how to use the tools. They have the experience, the know-how, and they just start charging into the forest, cutting a path. Now, Team B waits back a little bit, okay? And Team A is looking over their shoulder like, what in the world are those guys doing? And they're looking through some stuff and they get behind about 15 minutes, maybe 30 minutes as they're doing something. What they're doing will become evident here in a minute. But the outcome of it is after that short delay, what happens is they start veering off to the left, kind of going out towards left field. Team A has no idea why, they don't care, they just keep moving forward like they always have, okay? So a few days into the journey, Team A makes their way through the forest and they come across this river. Oh, snap. We didn't count on that, right? We didn't think about, well, what will happen if we run into a river? So now we've worked hard, we've done what we've always done, put our nose to the grindstone, worked through the forest, and here we are, we have a problem, okay? Now look, the team gets together, they have all the right talent and experience and intelligence and so forth and problem-solving abilities. So they come together and very quickly recognize it only makes sense to build a bridge, right? Now, had they known they were going to build a bridge, obviously they would have collected some of that wood, some stone and so forth, all the materials that they needed, and they would have brought that with them to the river's edge to build the bridge, but they didn't do that. So now what they have to do is they come up with a plan, they go back, collect the materials and so forth. And the result of all of that is they get delayed, not by days, by weeks. Building a bridge isn't a simple task, especially from raw materials like this, right? So the river acts as a bit of a metaphor for those unforeseen surprises that happen in business. It could be something as simple as supply chain issues. It could be something as complex as COVID that lasts for 2+ years, okay? But we all run into these situations in business where something comes up that we didn't expect. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know of any way to avoid that. That's going to happen, okay? But there are some things we can do to help minimize the number of surprises that we have, okay? So let's go back to the beginning. Remember, we were at the edge of the forest. And at ground zero, both teams had the same view. All we could see were the trees, right? One team decided to go right into it. Another team took a moment. And what they did was they actually sent a drone up above the tree line. Now, not just any drone, but the quadcopter that we're using in our presentations today, okay? So Team B put this quadcopter up and took a look, and this is what they saw, right? Remember, when we saw this slide, we were talking about theoretically if we could get above the trees. Well, this is actually what Team B saw. And not only did they see the trees and the fact that there were miles of trees to go until they got to the base of the mountain, and then they still had a tall mountain to scale, they also saw there's a river. And oh, by the way, there happens to be a bridge already built over here to the left. Well, that explains why Team B veered off into left field, right? So the moral of this story is basically to say that what Team B did that was different was they got above the problem, right? To work on the business, we have to get out of it for a moment, okay? In this case, we had to get out of the forest and above the forest to be able to see that there's a river there. First, we wanted to see what our objective was clearly, then see what the potential challenges would be so we weren't surprised. So we could plan the correct course. And in the end, despite the fact that Team A got a head start, Team B actually got to the destination sooner at a lower cost, right? And ultimately, that was the better choice, right? So they leveraged technology and with the help of a consultant, got above the problem so that they could see, again, the objective and the potential pitfalls, okay? So some of you may have seen this animated video. If you haven't, please let me know and I'll be happy to send it to you. But we have a really nice 2-minute long animation that basically describes our role in this growth advisory role with our clients. And the simple way to describe it is we can act like a Sherpa or a guide, right? It's not that we're any smarter than anybody else, right? You've got a full team of engineers, great problem solvers, people that know how to use the tools. That's really not our advantage. Our advantage is we've climbed the mountain, not once, not twice, not a dozen times, 100 times, right? We've figured out where to step and where not to, the hard way, right? We've cut down the trees, we've built the bridges, we've made our way through quicksand with our clients, and we've gotten amazing results with them and for them. And now we're able to help you do the same thing, right? Again, it has nothing to do with things we know that you don't. We just have experiences that you may not have, or more of the same experiences that you might have that will help guide you, okay? So a couple of years ago, we created this growth advisory service, and it was really just a formalization of services we'd been offering for years. But now there's a page on our website, and you can take a look at that and learn more about that. And today, what we're going to focus on most of all are some tools that we use when we engage with our clients in a growth advisory engagement, okay? So you can take a look at that at your leisure. And I want to start with something really, really simple. And I hope the simplicity of this doesn't offend anybody, but I think it really helps kind of get us started off on the right foot. So bear with me. So I want to focus on 2 words, continuous improvement. Now, I know all of us know what those words mean, but I'm actually going to take a moment to break it down. Okay, bear with me. And before we do that, I want to talk about these programs that have already been developed related to continuous improvement, right? So you might be familiar with Kaizen or Lean Six Sigma or BPM. There's more. There's about a dozen of them that I was able to find. I didn't know about all of them, but most of us know at least Lean Six Sigma, right? There are these programs that are mature, robust, and they are there for a reason, because we need systems and processes and formal ways to approach this idea of continuous improvement, okay? So we're not here to talk about any of those today. We're going to keep it way more simple. And again, as I described, I just want to focus on the two words for a moment: continuous and improvement. Continuous means forming an unbroken whole without interruption, right? We know that. Improvement, a thing that makes something better or is better than something else. Let's keep it super simple. Make something better without interruption, okay? That's what I want to focus on. And it's not important at all to name names or give specific examples, but I can tell you from many, many, many engagements, what we see over and over, again, are very talented, very intelligent, hardworking groups of engineers and leaders that are very good at identifying problems, coming up with solutions, and solving the problems, okay? And in the end, what we see when we zoom out from that, get above it, is a series of start, stop, and start scenarios, right? We stop what we're doing, start working on a solution, then we stop, and then the next, it's very reactive, and then we find another problem. And when we find the next problem, stop, start, stop, right? That's not continuous improvement. That's the fundamental concept that I want to share with you, because what we're aiming for is, with your help, through the use of the tools that I'm going to show you a few of, is build a continuous improvement plan, right? Make it better without interruption over a long period of time. These engagements are not measured in weeks and months. We're talking about quarters and years, okay? So when you think about the possibilities of the things that we could improve over years, it gets really exciting. The impact that we can make is actually quite large, okay? So again, I'm going to keep it super simple. We're really going to focus on continuous improvement. Now, some of you may have seen in previous presentations that I've done, I've shared this quote before, and I want to bring it back. If you're not familiar, it goes like this: every system is perfectly designed to get the results that it gets. Now, the odd thing is there's two different people that claim to have come up with this quote, but putting that aside, I love this quote, okay? Because our jobs in engineering, leadership, business owners, right? Our jobs are to continuously get better results. Now, how in the world would we possibly get better results tomorrow from a system that's been designed to get the results we're already getting? See where I'm going with that, right? That's why I love this, because it in and of itself is basically describing how important continuous improvement is. No matter how good your current system is, it likely will never produce better results than it already is unless it evolves. That's what Growth Advisory is about. Taking a very close, deep look at your systems and processes, helping you evolve those, right? Helping you decide which things to work on first, in which sequence, right? To get the best results, to have the biggest financial impact, okay? Let's take a moment to talk about why. Why is DesignPoint working on this now? Why is there such a big focus? Well, there's a couple of reasons. And we put them into two different buckets. The first bucket is opportunity, right? So there's a lot of opportunities right now in our market. I'm just going to highlight a few of them. There's some technology shifts. Anytime there's a change, it's an opportunity. Now, sometimes changes cause pain, or at least perceived pain. But we encourage you to look at any kind of shift or change as an opportunity to look at, how do we get ahead? How do we leapfrog our competitors? Whenever there's a change or there's something happening in the market, let's take the pandemic, for example. Some companies have made a conscious decision to sit and wait, right? Sit and wait and see what happens. And when they made that decision, they made a decision for you too, which is opening up an opportunity for you to make a similar decision. Are you too going to sit and wait? Or are you going to look at this as an opportunity to potentially get ahead of your competition? That's what we mean by these technology shifts and so forth, is in terms of being opportunities. And there are opportunities to reduce costs and improve profits. How? We're going to talk about that, about this deep dive into your as-is state, right? And trying to figure out how to evolve those systems and processes to get better results, to lower costs. A simple example is, what has your company done? And I'm sure some of you have, okay? But think about, what has your company done to really think about the fact that many of us have been forced to work from home at least part of the time. How do we turn that from a threat to an opportunity? How do we turn that into a way to lower costs? How do we turn that into a way to find and hire more and maybe even better resources, right? Those are opportunities, okay? Now, the other bucket, of course, are threats. And again, you could come up with a long list of both opportunities and threats. I've just identified a few, but there's a lot of pressure on profit right now for most companies. Now, there are some exceptions, but most companies are seeing more pressure on profits, if for no other reason than supply chain issues, cost of materials increasing significantly in some cases, right? If for no other reason, if business is up, but you're having supply chain issues and you're having trouble, because materials costs are going way up, that's putting pressure on the business, even when business is up, right? Some companies are finding themselves in a position where they have to do more with less. It's just a simple way to describe it, whether that be because they had to let people go or for any reason lost some people, they lost some talent, they've lost some resources. That puts pressure on the business. So we could put that in the threats bucket, right? But that's okay. That's why we're doing this now, right? That was the question we asked. Why is DesignPoint focused on this now? So let's shift gears and let's talk about how. We talked about why. Let's talk about how. So we do this in a number of ways. And again, there's tools that we use. And I'm going to start with this tool called an assessment. So this has been a service that we've offered for years. It's been more formalized, and it too has gone through evolution. And I'm really proud of the last evolution. We've really taken the reporting of this service to a whole new level. I'm really proud of what my team has done with that. But there's a page right on our website all about this. And this is where oh no, sorry guys. Bear with me. Adrian, are you still there?
I am still here.
Can you see my screen still?
We're on the why and engineering assessment.
Okay, so you can't see the big screen where it says assess? Oh, I'm sorry. Now, does it say assess?
Now it says assess.
Okay, thank you, Adrienne.
You're welcome.
All right, so our job is to assess, right, through this assessment. That makes sense, right? But I want to give you a sneak peek as to what that looks like. And before I jump into it, what you're going to see are about 6 or 7 pages of what was a nearly 50-page report for a specific client, okay? And it's not important that you try to actually read, because it might be difficult with the size of the text. It's not important that you read the content. I'm going to describe to you how we deliver the information and the kind of information that we deliver, okay? So the first thing I would like to show you is this graphic of the workflow that we follow through our assessment, right? So it starts with deep discovery, right? Think of that as very departmental level focused interviews. More than one person on your team, usually. And again, department by department, deep interviewing to remember what we're trying to do is assess your current state, okay? We have a meeting day, on-site when able, virtual if necessary, right? And we do more deep discovery. We have internal collaboration amongst our team once we start collecting notes, start talking about what we've seen, what we've heard, trying to do a little bit of cause and effect relationship. We call that connecting the dots, right? Why is this happening, right? This is a symptom of a bigger problem. Let's connect these dots. In doing so, what we're able to do is start visualizing what your roadmap, and I'll describe that later, might look like over some period of time to start working on some of these areas where there's room for improvement. Okay, so we have a proven process is what you should take from this particular page from the report. We also have a single page, and it's meant to be a single page executive summary, right? So I'm just going to show you how it's laid out. We identify and communicate back to your leadership what the team has said the goals are. Because ultimately what we want, whether leadership was or wasn't involved in the assessment itself, is we want collective buy-in at every level, right? Executives and management, leadership, everybody needs to be on the same page. These are the goals, stated goals. These are the challenges and pain points. Again, we're only, in this case, we identified 4. You'll see later on, it was probably 40. We identified top level items to present to the executive team. We document our information sources. We document a little bit about your company information. Again, this is all trying to connect the dots. We document who on the DesignPoint team was involved. And of course, we have a short overview of the key solutions that we have in mind for this company. And then a brief statement about the financial impact that we expect from this larger project. Okay, and meant to be one page, it's always kept to one page, but we can get that in front of leadership. And what we're looking for, again, is buy-in and commitment at the very highest levels to continue to move forward. Because again, we're trying to build a plan that doesn't take days and weeks, but instead takes quarters and years to execute. Okay, a lot here. Please don't try to read it. That's not the point. This is another page from the report where we have collected from the client or helped them build a process flow map, right? And it's kind of interesting. This one I like to talk about a little bit because oftentimes when we're pitching this idea, the customer will very quickly say, "Oh, we've already done a process flow map. We've already done that. That's good. We don't need your services." This, remember, this is one image on one slide of a nearly 50-page report. The process flow map, the importance of it is this. Yes, you document it so you can visualize it. Here's the fun part. Here's the fun exercise. Once we do it, document it, even if you've documented it yourself. Here's what I like to do. Get 2 people from several departments. You know, think engineering, quality, manufacturing, maybe leadership, purchasing, sales, could be any, right? Get 2 people from each of those departments to look at this document and circle the 3 areas where the biggest bottlenecks are. Okay, now think about that if you did that at your company. I don't need a crystal ball. I can tell you how this is going to go every time. There's going to be some very consistent, usually a small number, 2, 3, 4, very consistent. Everybody knows there are these bottlenecks, right? So pretty much everybody's going to point to a few of them, okay? But then you're going to find, depending on the person, their role, their department, their perspective on where the other bottlenecks are is going to be very, very different. It's a great exercise, right? So then when you look through that lens, you really start seeing what the overall picture looks like through the lens of continuous improvement. If we only focus on 2 or 3 things, they may be big impact items, right? But what we find is that by solving these smaller bottlenecks, those are oftentimes enablers for us to go tackle some bigger problem, okay? Really great exercise, one I love to be involved with. So think about that, right? We get in there, we really understand how your systems work, how, for example, information comes through sales to engineering to manufacturing and purchasing. We take a look at how all of that flows. We look for the bottlenecks, the things that slow people down, when mistakes are made, where are they made, how are they made, how many are made, what's the cost, what's the financial impact, blah, 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 blah. Okay, let's keep moving. On this page, what I'd like for you to take away from this is very, very specific. Please, again, don't try to read this. Look down the left side. Down the left side of this, what I'm pointing out here is these are all of the categories that we dig into. And you would expect us as a SolidWorks reseller, if we're doing an assessment, we're going to focus a lot of time on engineering efficiency, maybe data management if you have it. But look at some of these other categories. We're going to poke around on culture. Why? Because cultural issues can slow you down no matter how good your engineering systems and processes are, right? We're going to look at other systems and processes outside of engineering, advanced manufacturing, technical sales, and so forth, okay? That's what I want you to get from this page, is that we're really looking in a lot of areas, okay, to try to find ways to improve your as-is state and continue to grow to your to-be state. All right, here's another one. Please don't try to read it. Here's what I'd like for you to take from this. Remember, this is one specific client. At this client site, we've got ERP, SolidWorks, project management tools through Microsoft, data management, an ERN process, production scheduling in Excel, shipping scheduling also in Excel, along with their ERP system, pre-sales marketing, and assembly instructions, okay? Here's what we did with them. We looked at those areas and then we, with their help, right? Not us ranking and rating, with their help together, ranking and rating their usage, efficiency, the impact, and the risk associated to those things. So that, let's zoom into this a little bit, so that if we look at ERP, for example, right, they use it all the time, right? They consider this their single source of the truth, but their efficiency level is very low. Now, the impact is somewhere in the low to mid range, but the risk is very high. Now, why is the risk high? Because this is the single source of the truth, right? So if anything goes wrong because they're inefficient at it, everything's kind of at risk, right? So when we go through that assessment of their usage and efficiency in all of these categories, it helps us to shine the light on the most important areas to focus on, right? Remember, it's one page out of almost 50, right? So what do we do next? So far, what we've done is we've understood your flow, right? We've taken a look at different areas, culture, engineering efficiency, and so forth. We've looked at your efficiency and usage of your key systems, that sort of thing. Well, now we're starting to get a picture of where we might focus. But what we need to do now is start to sequence the solution, right? We like to say we can do anything, but we can't do everything. So we've got to come up with a sequence that makes sense, right? So how do we do that? Again, more pages from an actual report. So remember our categories over here: culture, systems, process, engineering efficiency, and so on. In each category, we've got some number of pain points. We've identified the priority level. We've got some number of suggested solutions, and we've got a stab at how much time we think it would take to put the solution in place, okay? So for example, it takes longer to do a cultural shift than it takes to make some engineering efficiency tweaks most of the time, okay? But what we do from here, remember, this is one page. Each one of these categories then has at least one more page in the report, in most cases several. So what we're going to do is just focus on another page or two under engineering efficiency, okay? So note that there's 9 suggested solutions under engineering efficiency. So going back to the report, when we go to the next page, this is the next page under engineering efficiency. We've got 2, 4, 9 solutions, those solutions falling under software, professional development, and process improvement categories. And then some description of those challenges and the potential solutions, okay? Now, to put it in perspective, under engineering efficiency, there were 4 pages on this report just in this category to explain what the potential solutions look like and the problems that they would solve, okay? Now that we start to use this information to figure out our sequence, now it's time to start building a roadmap. That's what we call it, okay? So ultimately what we're trying to do is develop a plan, again, over quarters and years. In this particular case with this client, it was a 3-phase approach, and we start putting it together. It looks a little bit like a Gantt chart, right? And we figure out what we can do, how long it's going to take. We choose those items based on impact, efficiency impact, financial impact, and so forth, and start building out this plan. Okay, again, it's not important what the actual words say here. I'm trying to show you the structure of how we approach it, okay? Now, the benefits to the roadmap, at least in my eyes, number one, it very clearly describes what, why, and how we're going to tackle this long list of potential improvements, right? What are we going to do? Why are we doing it? All defined by risk and impact and things like that, and how, through a phased approach, right? It clearly articulates the vision and the outcomes, right? We have to know what we're driving towards. Sometimes we're working on a project in the timeline, as I mentioned before, that's actually an enabler for something else that's coming later. In other words, we have to fix something else so that when we get to the next item, we have an even bigger impact on the next action or item, okay? It clearly articulates the actions, right? Remember, all of these solutions are spelled out in writing, what we're doing, what problem it's solving, and so forth. It also acts a little bit like, like a map at a mall, right? You are here. It helps us understand where we are, not only what we've accomplished, but where we are in terms of what more there is to do and what are those items that are coming up so that we can plan for it. Because the destinations or objectives and priorities can change. When you're building a plan that's 3 years long, if you think that everything's going to go the way that we planned for it from day one, that never happens, guys. Things change. Pandemics happen. Unfortunately, things happen. It changes the course, and that's okay. We expect that. What do we do when there's a change? We go back to the plan, right? And we address whatever the change is, understand the impact, how important it is, and figure out where it fits, and then move all the pieces around to accommodate, okay? That's what we do, and we know it's going to come. I want to show you just a couple more pages from the report. This one, again, there's a lot of information. Hang in there with me. I just want to focus on a couple things. I want you to focus on the first line, ERN process. What we're saying here is that we've identified, we used their numbers. It's critical that you understand this. These numbers came from the client. The client said they spend 10 hours per person per week in their ERN process. We believe that based on the solutions that we have in mind, that can be reduced by 70%. 70% of 10 is 7, right? So we're going to save 7 hours per person per week. And we used their fully burdened rate, not ours. And the math on that savings for that category of items is $65,000 per year. That's the financial impact. To the right, what we're showing is how we expect that return to come. And what we're saying is that 70% expected efficiency gain for that category, because of the phased approach, we're only going to get 10% in phase 1. By the end of phase 2, we will have achieved 50%, 40 plus 10. And by the end of phase 3, we'll get the additional 20 for the 70% efficiency gain, okay? So we try to be as realistic as we can be. In other words, we're not going to paint a picture that, we're going to work on this particular action item, and we're going to do that for 30 days or 60 days, and all of a sudden, magically, you're going to get 70% efficiency gains. It's just not how it works, right? Not on these large scale plans. So we do our best to try to spell that out so that the customer then can plan for it. This is just another way to look at those numbers. It's the same information looking through a different lens. The blue lines here in the chart represent the delivery of the efficiency gain, right? Meaning we get a small amount in phase 2, a larger amount, small amount in phase 1, a larger amount in phase 2, and then a little more in phase 3, right? We don't get all 70% of that efficiency gain in phase 1. The gray bars in the chart represent what's left to do. So early on in phase 1, there's a lot more to do. Phase 2, there's less to do, and by the end of phase 3, it's done. And then the green bars represent how we're recovering that over time, right? Here we've got a small amount of it, the 10%. Here we've got 50%, so forth and so on. It just accumulates, okay? So again, what you've seen, 5, 6, 7 pages, something like that from this report, I just wanted you to see how robust, how deep this assessment goes and the kind of information and the way that we deliver that information to you. So what's next? Well, what's next is we've got a workshop. That's my next session. That's at 2 o'clock. So if you decide to join me, we're going to work through some actual exercises together. And it's really important that you come prepared to do this with your numbers. The exercise just won't work if we use my numbers. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through a couple of them. You'll need a calculator and something to write with or something to take notes with. Okay, so again, we're going to focus on the 1% tool, where we're going to understand what 1% of efficiency gain means in your company. We're going to put a dollar amount to it. It will be your number, not mine. Okay, but after that exercise, you'll have clarity on what 1% means to your company. And then I can explain to you what we do with that information, okay? And then after that, we're going to do what we call a 2-minute blitz, where we basically identify a few top priorities in your company, problems to solve, if you will. I'm going to walk you through an exercise where I think you'll be pretty pleasantly surprised how many ideas we can come up with in a very short period of time. And I really hope you'll join me for that, because this is probably the biggest eye opener for most clients. Okay. So a couple of housekeeping things and next steps. This is what your interface looks like for our event. I want to point out a couple of things. Up here at the top in the blue ribbon, there's a button that says Lounge. You can access the lounge and communicate with myself or anybody else on my team through that if you haven't done so already. So if you need to reach me, that would be one way. Another way is over here, we've got a little floating chat button. That too will get you to the same place. And then finally, I want to point out this button, Free Business Consultation. We're offering, all you need to do is click on the button, a free hour of consulting. So also for those of you who are trying to gather points, that is a high point value button to click on. So I hope that you'll do that. Okay, so please join me for the workshop that starts at 2 p.m. sharp, and hopefully I won't have any more technical difficulties. All right, thank you for joining us today, and we'll see if we have any questions.
Yeah, I'm very hopeful there'll be no further difficulties. I do see that Nick sent you a note saying it's a great point with the start and stop of continuous improvement. I think that gets lost on management. Yeah, I'll just comment on that. That's not specific to any single company. It's, I would say, almost every company. And everybody's busy, and everybody's doing their best to keep up and keep growing their businesses. And what I can tell you from experience is if we take a little bit of time to get above things, it really helps us get clarity on why we should be committed to continuous improvement and not just these start and stops that we typically do. So I hope that we're able to get engaged with you. That's great. If you have questions, yep, you can pop them into the group chat or into the Q&A, either one. Brett, we got one. What is ERN? ERN. Now that I'm trying to think which customer that was. So what you're going to find out is that from client to client, sometimes we get confused too, because there's different clients use different terms for the same thing. So you'll hear like ECO, ECR, ECN. That one was engineering request number, I believe. We're getting it as engineering review notice. Review notice, okay. Thank you for that, whoever added that. Yeah, and it's, again, different companies use different terms for very similar activities. That particular client was not one that I personally worked with. I am familiar with the client and the plan, but that was one that Chris Kresick worked on. So. Any other questions? One popping up in the Q&A. What is the service called for the consultation and review? What is the service called? Yes, for the consultation and review. So with the service that you're talking about, what do we call that, Brett? Our assessment. Why don't you come up with something? We just. Yeah, well, it's our assessment. It's our DesignPoint assessment report is what he's talking about. Yeah, so we're not giving away an assessment. What we're giving is a 1 hour consultation. And what we'll do in that 1 hour is we'll go through some of these tools so that your team can get a feel for what the engagement is like. It's funny, I don't know that we gave it a formal name for the 1 hour. Oh, if our person who's asking a question about that for the free 1 hour consultation, we did not name it, but if you go and that's a great point. But if you go into the location that Brett pointed out to you and just fill out the form, there's a Google form just to fill out to sign up for the review, and we will contact you about that. Brett, there's another question that says, this is a very encompassing report. Typically, how long does it take to do? And this is about the assessment. Yeah, so that's a great question. So the assessment is 1 day of service, typically, in terms of our engineers being engaged. Now, that's well planned out, so we get a lot out of that day.
okay, then the truth is it's lots of days of work on our part, right? So we go, I say go in because sometimes it's virtual. We go in there for one full day, 8 hours, and we collect all this information. And then my guys spend days going through the information, connecting the dots, building the report. And then typically, whether it's myself or Chris or Mary Beth, one of us, whoever your account manager is, will work with you to go through the report to then figure out what the next steps are. Okay, so it's an engagement that continues to go on so long as you want to stay engaged.
Great. I think that's all the questions we have and all the time that we have. So I want to thank Brett for joining us. And please stay tuned for his 1% workshop. We'll take a quick 15-20 minute break and we'll see you all back for the 1% workshop.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Have a good day.